All right, what's going on, you guys? Today is Tuesday, June 1st, so happy June, you guys. I know a lot of people have made the same comment. This year seems to be flying by real fast. As normal, I've been staying real busy. I know I've been saying that on just about every video in the last year and a half. But if I look a little tired, I did get away for the weekend and run a little low on sleep. But this will be a good time. I'll give you guys a little cheers for some coffee. Hope everyone's doing well. So I did mention this a couple times ago. This is my Shave Revolution brush, one that I've referred to as kind of like my favorite brush, but also my best lathering brush. And I was lucky enough to buy a replacement of it. The only difference is this one doesn't have the watermark on the bottom. This is the one that I've used for like 5-6 years, so this one's quite a bit more broken and soft. This is the newer one, so I just grabbed the one that is a little bit more, not scritchy, but it's just obviously less broken in. So today we're using the old stock or old formula of the Haslinger Schafmilch Raziar Scheif. This is the ewe's milk, which is above my finger, and then the Lanolin. That's what that translates to, ewe's milk. Nowadays I'm not the biggest, I don't really have anything against lanolin. I don't have an allergy. I just, if I were to make a soap formula, I don't know that I would be using lanolin. I think it's a great ingredient to use. I don't know, for some reason I just find that, maybe there's a little bit more hesitancy with people ordering different soaps if it has lanolin. And I just think there's enough options on the market to be able to formulate with other oils without lanolin. So it's not really like an issue of like an ethical or, I don't know. I just think that the ability to formulate nowadays is just very, like I said, there's just a lot of options on different things you can choose, but it obviously works very well. This was the soap that years ago on the forums, when people would say they would have a hard time lathering Mitchell's wool fat. This one, the only thing you got to do is just load a decent amount. That's a chunk of soap. And then what you have to do is you just have to drown this. Like, Haslinger takes a lot of water. So get my first little dip here. Real quick, I'm going to be using this again in my last shave. On Friday, I pulled out a brand new one. For some reason while I was gone, I'm not sure if it was maybe blood. I thought I rinsed my razor and then I leave it temporarily in some alcohol. And for some reason the blade was all discolored when I took it out to change out the base plate. So if for some reason the blade doesn't feel good, I'm just going to switch it out. So I've got the pack here and ready. This brush is feeling like as I expected. It's kind of a point, not a pointed quite like, maybe some of the German, or I wouldn't even necessarily say that Plisson is a pointed bowl, but it's kind of like a, what do they say? A light bulb shape. Give me a second. But, so getting a chance to check out some videos last night. Something came up about Declaration Grooming, I guess, with their latest batch of badger knots. You're getting some people reporting that they're more or less, I think that the knots were over bleached, and that the top portion of the hairs for the two band knots were breaking. So last night and a little bit this morning, I was watching Scott's video. So I'm just going to share my comments, and as normal, take everything that I say with a grain of salt, as well as just understanding that, let's just say, for instance, someone like a viewer is wanting to, be able to take my opinion as a educated, I don't know, like my view comes from experience, and so they may take my take me for my word that they make a decision based off of what my experience was. So I just want to remind everybody that even if you have similar preferences, or maybe if I've confirmed certain things, like if I have recommended you guys, let's say, an SV soap, and you've bought it and it's worked really well, I still think it's important to, every different thing, remember that your experience is going to be unique to you. And so a few of the things that Scott was saying was that he's obviously not sure if every single knot had this issue of being over bleached, and that it's more prone to at some length of the individual hairs be more prone to breaking, making it more fragile. And that's definitely possible. So I will forewarn you guys, if you are seeing people, regardless of maybe their tone in their comment, if you guys see people that aren't having the same issue as like John Shaves, the one that I watched, don't automatically assume that those are people, like taking sides with Scott. And I say that because I remember getting a Morrison Forgeron brush. I remember getting a Paladin knot. And they're not the only ones, but those two specifically, I remember specifically had treatment on the knot, and it was not a consistent bleaching process, meaning there's patches on those knots that I used that were not consistently bleached. Parts of them have a little bit more bleach in them, and they come out a little bit softer. It's not so much that you can really feel it. Based on what I remember, it's just a very clear visual representation. I'm not quite sure at this moment, when you guys are seeing someone's knot that's more not like this. This is kind of like a gold tan color, but when you guys see the white tips with kind of like the little bit of that brown tinge, I don't know if that's necessarily from the bleaching process starting to slowly damage the hair. So I just say this because, again, if there can be inconsistencies in one knot, I think it is fair to say that it may not be the case that every single person's knot got over bleached. I would assume the way that Scott is handling this and offering a refund for both the original buyers, and if someone decided to sell it and purchase it on the secondhand market, that they're going to be okay with receiving a refund. I think that's great. I wouldn't want to be in Scott's position, but I had a couple other thoughts. What was it? So this is the second shave on the Wilkinson Sword London Bridge, not the Gillette one made in China. These are a little older. This is with a titanium plus base plate. I don't know if you guys can see. So Scott made mention that I guess his supplier didn't really offer much help. start right here real quick, just see. Yeah, let's take this out. I don't really care how expensive these blades are. I'll let you guys see what I'm talking about. I don't know. I'll have to clean this razor. Like I said, I'd leave it in alcohol, but maybe I was a little bit in too much of a rush the other day. So that's all right. Brand new one. London Bridge. I'll just re-lather real quick. Yeah, from his supplier standpoint, I don't want to necessarily say I'm kind of taking their side, but the American market, in my opinion, has really been the main driver in what has changed. I don't know, like Badger brushes did get cheaper for quite a while. And I'm not talking about, and I don't mean it as a bad thing, but Badger brushes are really expensive when it comes to the artisan market. And it's not to say that the knots aren't expensive, but I just think that you're paying for the artisan's time and the labor. And then on top, I just think you're paying for a lot of the handle. Are these handles exciting? Compared to what you can get, probably not to most of you guys. This is very ergonomic. So to me, it's like, I don't care how much money I'm going to spend on a brush. If the handle doesn't feel ergonomic, there's no point in me paying $200-300. This brush, I love the knot. This handle is not ergonomic to my hands. So I'm going to break this handle sometime soon. Get it put in a different one. Okay, let's try this again. Let me just start right here. A lot smoother. So I don't know, maybe I just left blood on the blade without realizing it. So now I want to talk about two things. This whole term of hand tied and like trying to figure out what knots are hand tied, which ones aren't. I do know that I've seen some of these videos, and I think maybe I could be wrong, but maybe there's some of the more affordable knots, and I can't remember if it's in this video that I saw, maybe boar hair, maybe it's badger hair knots, horsehair, but I do think a couple of the European suppliers have some of their more affordable models that are kind of like machine set knots. But again, this is just my experience with how many Badger brushes I've bought. And not just that, but just being very much a brush aficionado and trying to understand as much as I could over the last years being in shaving. Some of this stuff is not necessarily the most public information, but it's not that it's totally top secret. I remember hearing speculation. I think it was the guy, is it Chris? Chris from Gentleman's Nod. I knew him years before he was making the Gentleman Nod soaps. And we were talking about the Simpson 2-band brushes when I was working in Old Town Shaving. God knows how many years ago. And he remembers, he was the first person I remember hearing. We were talking in person. And he said, I think the way that these 2-band brushes get so soft is people are alleging it's a bleaching process. And to me, I had that confirmed last year through a video. At least one example of being able to do it is through bleaching the hair, because God, no, I'm forgetting. The one guy that put out the video. I don't think is it Strike Gold Shave? I can't remember. Heritage? I think Heritage. The guy that does reproductions. So I'm really stoked that he shared that video. I'll talk about that again in a second. But again, this term of hand-tied, I think it's a discussion that I think what ends up happening is, and this isn't to say that I think all of these types of, let's just say this is a Yaki brush, Uomo, maybe the Frank shaving. I'm just trying to think of the different kind of like Chinese suppliers. I think because of the price, people are under the assumption that they are, because they're not marketed as hand-tied. I know Ken at Shave 326 was kind of making a comment, kind of wondering with Brad Sears. He said, he asked Brad Sears, are your guys' knots hand-tied? And he said, yeah, they're made by a outfitter in China. And I think some people, when they hear that, I don't know that this is what Ken is assuming, but I think it's a good point. Some people may assume, okay, so it's not hand-tied. I think where I make the distinction is, we'll say, for instance, some of these Chinese suppliers, you're seeing a group of people in the manufacturing videos, or just the manufacturer shots of their shop. There's multiple people that tie the knots. And somehow that ends up, I think, to some people meaning they're not hand-tied by one person, like one artisan. So I'm not assuming that all of you guys that may think that's what your assumption is. But again, a knot being made by Aldo at the Varley. He's one dude. I know he ties, sorts, does every step of the process. And as much as I respect him and am willing to pay a much higher premium for different amounts for different reasons, it's the same process as the cheaper brushes, whether they're made in China or not. I'm just doubling down on, I think people get a little bit too, I don't know, they get a little lost on kind of what is important. And I think trying to value the hand-tied knots in a way to think that they're more artisanal or there's more craftsmanship, I don't think so. I'm not telling you guys that if you really prefer the feel of, I'm going to throw on some of this pre-shave oil. I don't know why the residual slickness is. Let's see. So again, whether you guys have a different experience or a conflicting view, or so, it's okay. I'm happy to have a conversation, or people's experience can obviously vary a lot, but I've had more than my fair share of investment when it comes to shaving brushes, especially Badger brushes. Although I really prefer what would be called a 3-band or a silver tip, I really have kind of gotten out of this whole taking the branding or the grade labeling. I don't put as much emphasis and value, belief. There's times where I kind of take them at their word, and then once I get a chance to use a brush, it's up to me personally to kind of value how much that means. I think that going back to when Scott's telling us that his supplier is not really offering anything to him or anything to the customers, part of me kind of understands that, because over however many years, the American market has really pushed for, we want denser knots, we want softer knots, we want a, I don't know. And now, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that Scott's telling me that his his hair, or is it his knots are now getting treated in China before he's getting them? I was kind of under the impression, and I could be wrong, I have no inside information. I'll mention Aldo at the Varley in a moment, but I guess I kind of was thinking that Scott was doing the bleaching treatment himself. I've tried, I think, three or four of the Varley brushes, and that's to also include the the K2, the Everset. I've tried, I think, 2 Eversets and then 2 Beehives. Okay. And all those were quite less recent. 4 or 5 years ago. The Eversets were a little bit newer, so maybe those were used like 3 years ago. But those originally were, as I say, less treated Badger brushes. The 2-band exhibits the firmness from the individual hairs, having a thicker, trunk, a little bit more backbone, so to speak. But the tips were nowhere near as treated and softened as a lot of brushes now. And that was one of the reasons, although I still at rare times would purchase kind of a 2-band brush, even though at that time I had already had years of experience with the current brushes that I have, and knowing that I just like a more pliable hairbrush. And so then I started hearing that Aldo's newer brushes a couple years ago started getting gel tipped. That kind of surprised me. I don't think it's a bad thing. Obviously, I'm not purchasing Varley brushes. Doesn't mean I won't, but chances are, you guys, if I get another Varley brush, I'll try to work it out with Aldo. I'm not going to get another 2-band brush from him. I've already got a whole box of 2-band hair that I can make a few 2-band knots myself. So there's no reason for me to get a 2-band brush. And I understand. I think a lot of people have a different preference in face feel versus me. I like a lot of different aspects of a knot to be soft. This pure High Mountain White one that I used in the last video just uploaded, it's still soft. The tips aren't broken in, but it's not just the tips. It's the density, it's the shaping, the loft. There's so much that goes into a brush that has an effect on the overall face feel. So again, and even besides the feel, I've had a couple of those newer Plisson Badger brushes that are not the most luxurious feeling, and I think that that's because of the grade of the hair. It doesn't mean that the knots aren't creating a very good lather. The shaping and the craftsmanship of the knot itself is still very good. It just comes down to the steps before, whether it's the type of hair that they're getting, or I don't know, it just doesn't end up being down to like one aspect. God, my face feels kind of tacky. It feels fine. It feels moisturized. It just, let me just give it one more rinse. So again, I'm not telling anybody what to do. I don't think that there's anything wrong with people wanting to continue to buy 2-band brushes. I think that there's an advantage to the market being able to have the 2-band knots kind of gain more popularity. I think there's more hair on a Badger pelt that can be used in a 2-band sense compared to like when you're having to buy a silver tip knot, a 3-band knot. It's a smaller portion of the pelt, which means that there's less to get, and there's less. There's just not as much hair that's usable. So the price inherently on a silver tip is going to be more expensive. I'm going to double up on some aftershave. So I'm going to actually use Planet 9. This is Neroli from Phoenix. I got to mention in the last video, I used the Cella Cool. Where did I put that? The Cella Cool, I did not have a reaction. I don't know what Douglas and Francis are using for as an aftershave. Oh, geez, sorry you guys, not for an aftershave. I don't know what they're using for the almond scent, almond fragrance. But at the end of that last video, I had kind of red skin. I think it was because I might have over lathered just a little bit with this, and I was in a rush. But I didn't have a red skin or skin reaction like I'd mentioned before with that P160. And then here's a little bit of the old the beach. I'm just going to do a little bit. So again, you guys, when it comes to like these badger brush talks, I kind of speak on my own behalf, my own experience. I try to tell you guys what my preferences are so that people don't, like for me, you're pretty much just going to see me use 3-band or silver tip. And if not, I use this plenty, the synthetic. Although I like the badger brushes more, it's not always the best in my personal experience. For daily shaves, this is going to get used more, back-to-back shaving. When I have like what I had this morning, 3.5 days beard growth, it makes more sense to use a badger brush. The luxury aspect is just more enjoyable, and the lathering process is just a little different because it holds that water a little bit differently. Got that menthol kicking in, but this feels really good. I haven't used that Haslinger in God knows how long. Let's see how this. It's great lather. So like I said, just gotta really drown it. So you guys, I think the only other comment that I'll make is, sorry, my skin is real thin from being up in the altitude and being in the sun, so that's why I keep rubbing my right eye. I forget where I have the video, but after Heritage Shaving had released that video of how to bleach your own badger knot, it reminds me of this post that I saw years ago. I'll bring up two things. This post specifically was kind of calling out these manufacturers that bleach their knots. And this guy's post was very, very pointed, very passionate about how it's kind of BS that they're selling us these bleached knots because they're damaging the knots. We're paying for damaged knots, and that the long-term use over time is that these are going to degrade much quicker than a naturally, a natural brush, whether it's treated or not. I don't know how you want to say it. And that's another thing. As much as I really love this brush and this brush, these are both the Shave Revolution. I'll even say the Vylong. Okay. Although they're not gel tipped, I've come to believe that I think all of the badger hair knots have some sort of treatment. I would even consider the sterilization, the boiling of hair, it's treated. So although I am guilty for very many years kind of distinguishing which knots I have that, well, this one's not treated, this is a more natural brush, I would say I've had to eat my words based on my experience and more knowledge, more of kind of that back end information that comes from the process of the manufacturers. I think everything is processed. I can't tell you for sure. Again, we have this kind of curtain that we have to kind of peek behind to figure out what's really going on with the knots, but I think that most of the badger hair is treated, it's heated, it could be minimally processed, minimally bleached, but getting back to what I was saying, when I started seeing that video, I said, I'm going to learn how to bleach my own knots. I tend to like things on the pretty soft side, although I don't want to take it to the gel tip end. And there's some disclosure that you have to tell people there's some risk in this. If you do it wrong, you could damage your hair or ruin the hair. I got mine like just perfect. I did it very minimally on a couple of the knots where I did it like 2 to 3 times with a mild bleaching process or a shorter bleaching process so that I didn't overdo it. I think that some people need to kind of consider if they like a really, really soft knot. Maybe it's worth considering trying to bleach your own knots. Again, that disclosure is like, I'm not going to do it at your own risk. I'm not going to be responsible for your experience doing them. I know for me, I feel very confident with badger hair, badger knots, just through buying so many of them and just the differences and variances over the years. Going back to like Scott's situation, as much as we want to use the same suppliers, use the same grading, it's a natural resource. There's only so much control that you can put on each thing without expecting some sort of variance. So it's not an easy situation for anyone to be in, but I think people have to accept that as much as the labeling or the grading is going to say it's the same thing, it's not. It simply is not going to be the same from season to season, year to year. So it's just up to the market to kind of be informed and understand that as much as you may want to buy the same feeling brush that you did a year ago from the same supplier, it's out of their hands to be able to know exactly if it's going to be that same feeling. But again, I think it's worth considering for those of you guys that really like a soft knot. Maybe you don't need to be expecting to only buy it from a certain vendor or supplier. Maybe you can bleach it yourself to a certain degree to find how soft you want to get it. But again, that comes with the disclosure of, I can't be responsible for your experience. I know that for years being in shaving, we all had that understanding that they're probably bleaching it, but we don't know how. And then last year, when Heritage Shaving is able to show their process of bleaching it, it really opened up a lot of doors for people to say, you know what, I'm going to take a stab at this, because for so many years, we're blind buying from so many different buyers, hoping and expecting that it's going to be this softness for this person, or maybe this person is hoping that it's going to be, even softer than that. So all I say is, maybe it's time for some of you guys to take, a little bit of experimenting on, let's say, a cheaper brush and give it a whirl yourself. Again, I think that it's a bummer when someone's investing, $200-$300 in a brush and not really being excited about the knot when it actually performs. That was the only other quick comment. One of the other people that I knew early on in the forums was just so, they were very, very adamant that anyone that said that badger brushes have a break-in period, he basically was saying that they're full of it. And that badger brushes out of the box are going to be the exact same as after 10 uses, after 50 uses, after 100 uses. And I just kind of shook my head at that person, because there's so many different things that I've experienced with badger brushes out of the box versus 5 to 10 latherings, that I don't know why that person was so on their high horse about telling everybody that did believe badger brushes have a break-in period, and telling them that they were all wrong, or, like I said, full of it. If I get a new badger brush, I'm not going to personally shave with it until cleaning it like 5 or 10 times. I know that's maybe a little excessive for some people, but I I don't have any interest with, you know, having a luxurious shave with all the badger funk and the gray lather in there. It's just not something that I want to do. I want to have the knot a little bit more clean, a little bit more freshened up. It's not necessarily to get the tip softer, but I will tell you guys, where's that other brush? Here we go. Okay. So again, these are the same brush, okay, with the exception of this watermark on the bottom. It's the same knot, it's the same brush. This one's probably, no joke, been used probably 300 times. I'm not exaggerating. For very many years, this one was one of the main ones that I used. It got a lot of use. I can definitely feel that this one, it's in that same vein. It's a little bit stiffer in a couple different ways. But damn, this knot, it feels so nice even without having been wet, without any lather. So whatever your guys' experiences are with badger knots, it's going to have to be based on if it's someone else that you guys trust that has experience. Maybe that's helpful. I've been in that boat where I look to other people in the community that, you know, have more experience than me. I've, you know, looked to them, asked them. I still do in some cases, but I've had enough experience purchasing brushes and then just doing my own research on how the process of making badger brushes is, that I have my own opinions and experiences on how it all gets done. And I think that you gotta spend some time with brushes. I think that it's not good to judge something out of the box. If like John Shave sees this, I'm not necessarily speaking to him like, oh, you know, these hairs breaking off, and then just some of the other comments that he made. I don't think that that's going to be solved by using the brush more. I just know that in general, sometimes there's a little bit of like, oh, bore knots really need to be broken in compared to other ones so that the hairs can split, which is true. But again, you got to spend time with your gear. I think that's one of the bad things about us being in this hobby is when we're a little trigger happy and we keep purchasing and purchasing more and more things, your inventory of tools or software, everything gets used less because it's more spread out. So I know for me, I have my seasons of using the same brush or using the same soap, and I try to stick with those for a while. I've kind of been in a little bit more of an experimental phase this last 6 months or a year, and at some time I'll settle back down and kind of just keep sticking with the same few brushes, same few soaps, and that's how I get my enjoyment. I'm not telling you guys that that's how you have to get your enjoyment or that there's anything wrong if you want to keep rotating, but yeah, I don't know. I know it's one of my longer videos again, but I think it's important to just remember that when you're investing a lot of money, especially in brushes, don't expect consistency. Again, it's a tough thing from the maker's point to be dealing with raw materials. I have to deal with that in ceramics. That's what some of these different things are. Here's down here. So it's a kind of like a chemical analysis of a English china clay, and there's different types of clays, and although you can blend them chemically to have the same makeup chemically, you'll get a bag of material a year later, 5 years later, and although the manufacturer says it's basically the same thing, it chemically is not. It's beyond their control to be able to have that guarantee that it's the exact same thing that it was 5 years ago. And so you kind of have to just deal with the fact that it is what it is. You can't change that. So you have to have the expectation of adjusting your use or adjusting your expectations to deal with it the best that you can. So that's probably more than people want to hear, but the shave was really good. This plus base plate with the brand new London bridge. Yeah, this, I don't know what I was thinking trying to use this blade. It was the brand new one that I pulled out on on Friday, so I don't know what the deal was. So anyway, I'll let you guys go. Have a good one. Hope you guys are all doing well. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. Again, if you have a disagreement with me, leave a comment. I'm curious to see what your guys' experience is. You guys are all great, so I'll talk to you guys soon.